Welcome to the Matchmaker Mentor Podcast with Arlene Washburn, the show where love industry professionals, coaches, and matchmakers come to learn, grow, and elevate their craft. Each episode dives deep into the art and business of matchmaking, featuring expert insights, real-world strategies, and inspiring conversations designed to help you create meaningful connections and lasting success. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting your journey, this is your space to be mentored, motivated, and moved to make a difference in the world of love. Now here's your host, Arlene Washburn.
Hello and welcome back to the Matchmaker Mentor Podcast. I'm your host, Arlene Washburn. And today I want to talk to you about the matchmaking advice that's quietly costing you matchmakers. So let's begin with the premise of this episode. First and foremost, somewhere in your first 90 days as a matchmaker, someone is going to hand you advice that sounds like gospel. It comes from someone who has been doing this for 15 years, 20 years, maybe 30 years. And a lot of what they tell you will be gold. Real, hard-won, learn the hard way gold. Some of it will set your business up to fail. I want to be careful with how I say that because the matchmakers who built this industry deserve our respect. Many of them opened doors when there were no roadmap, no training, no standards, and no community to lean on. They figured it out alone. We owe them a lot. Here is the part nobody says out loud. The market has changed underneath some of those methods. Consumers are more informed, regulators are paying closer attention, reviews live forever, chargebacks are easier to file than they have ever been, and the cost of matchmaking has gone up exponentially. And a few of the habits that worked in a quieter, less scrutinized era now carry risk that a new matchmaker cannot afford to take on. Today, I want to walk through 4 pieces of old school advice that you will almost certainly hear, explain why each one creates risk for your client and for you, and give you the modern alternative. Stay with me to the end. I am not here to make you cynical about your mentors. I want to help you keep what is timeless and retire what is dangerous. Before we go further, the standard reminder. Everything in this episode is educational and reflects professional best practices and industry standards. None of it is legal advice. Matchmaking is regulated differently depending on where you're headquartered, where your clients live, and where you market your services. So the rules that apply to you may look nothing like the rules that apply to a matchmaker 2 countries over. For anything involving contracts, refunds, licensing, or consumer protection, work with qualified counsel in your own jurisdiction. Treat what follows as a way to raise your standards, not as a substitute for professional legal guidance. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. Point number 1, respect the pioneers, question the playbook. Let me set the tone for the whole episode. You can hold 2 things at once. You can be grateful for the matchmakers who came before you, and you can still decide that some of their methods do not belong in your business. Most outdated advice is not malicious. It gets passed down the way family recipes get passed down without anyone checking whether the ingredients are still safe. A mentor teaches you the way they were taught. You teach it to your sales team. Nobody stops to ask whether the conditions that made it work still exist. Your job as a modern professional is to inspect what you inherit. Keep the wisdom, retire the liability. Everything else in this episode is an application of that one idea. Point number 2, and this is where we're going to begin, the one call close. Here's the first habit. You will hear it described as a one-call close. The idea is that you should get a prospect on a single call, build urgency, overcome every objection in the moment, and walk away with a signed contract and a payment before they hang up. Some trainers treat the one call close as the mark of real closers. I understand why it took hold. In a world before easy online research, urgency worked. People did not have a dozen other options to click away. A confident matchmaker who created momentum on one call could convert, and the model rewarded speed. The problem is what that speed skips over. Why selling before you understand the client creates refunds? When you close on the first call, you are selling your services before you actually know whether you can help that person. You have not assessed who they are, you have not confirmed you have matches for them, or a realistic path to find some. You have not learned whether their expectations are workable. You sold the package, then you went looking for a reason it was a good idea. Here's the way I like to picture this. Imagine a doctor who hands you a prescription the moment you walk through the door and then schedules your checkup for later after the medication is already in your hands. You would never trust that doctor because that prescription came before the diagnosis. The one call close works the same way. You are prescribing your service before you have examined what the client actually needs. And yes, a first call does reveal some of what the client is looking for. A few surface preferences come out naturally in a good conversation. The trouble is that a single call is rarely long enough to surface the things that actually determine fit, the genuine must haves, the real deal breakers, the lifestyle they live day to day, and whether your particular process is even right for them. You hear the easy answers and sign on those, while the information that would have told you whether to take the client at all is still buried. Walk through what happens next. Just as an illustration, you sign a client in their late 50s, looking for a very specific profile in a city where you have almost no inventory for that profile. You took the money on the first call because the call was going well and the energy was high. 3 months in, you have no introductions that fit. The client is frustrated, and now you are facing one of three outcomes: a refund request, a chargeback, or a public review that follows you for years. That is the hidden cost of the one call close. You set an expectation you had no evidence you can meet. And that expectation is what produces the refund. The modern alternative is a consultation, not a closing. Replace the one call close with a real consultation process. The first conversation is for discovery, not for pressure. You are there to understand the person, their situation, their expectations, and whether your service is a genuine fit. Now, a clarification, because I don't want you to overcorrect. Wanting to enroll a client is not the problem. You are running a business, and enrollment is how the business survives. The shift is in the sequence. You earn the right to recommend your services by first confirming you can serve the person well. When you lead with understanding, the close gets easier, not harder, because the client feels seen instead of being sold to. High pressure tactics are exactly the kind of conduct modern standards push us away from, and your refund rate will thank you for the change. Point number 5. Here's the second habit. You will be told to take any client who can pay. The reasoning sounds practical. Revenue is revenue. You're new and you cannot afford to turn business away. Here's where that advice usually comes from, because understanding the source is what lets you handle it well. A lot of it traces back to the large national agencies. Picture how those companies are actually built: a dedicated sales team that sells the contracts. The clients then are assigned to matchmakers who are expected to serve them no matter who walks through the door. The matchmakers only do matchmaking. They are not running a business at the same time because the company has entire departments handling operations. They have client support, and the cleanup when something goes sideways. And the database is enormous, deep enough that a national pool can usually find someone for almost anyone. Inside that structure, taking everyone is survivable. The infrastructure absorbs the risk, and the matchmaker is shielded from most of it. Now, look at your situation. If you are a solo matchmaker or a small independent agency, you are the sales team, the matchmaker, the operations department, and the support line all at once. You have no national database to fall back on and no separate team to absorb the mismatched client. When you inherit, take everyone from someone who formed their habit inside a large agency, you are importing the advice without importing a single one of the conditions that made it work. That is the trap from point one, all over again. The recipe gets passed down, but the kitchen is not the same. So the damage lands fast. Taking every client who walks through the door is one of the quickest ways to drown a young matchmaking business. Every client you cannot serve well becomes a service burden, a likely refund, and a reputation risk. When you sign a client, you take on the obligation to deliver, and that obligation outlasts the payment. The honest truth is that some prospects are not a fit for your business, and signing them anyway hurts both of you. The modern answer is a clear client fit guidance framework. The client fit guidance is the proprietary framework we teach inside Love Pro Mastermind Academy. And I want to walk you through it because the principle behind it is so you can put it to work immediately. Your fit criteria cannot live only in the owner's head. They have to be written down and used by everyone who touches a prospect, especially your sales team. Consider what happens without it. If you, the owner, knows in your gut that a certain type of client is wrong for your business, but your salesperson is compensated on closes and has never been given those criteria, your salesperson will keep signing the exact clients you would have turned away. The space between what the owner knows and what the sales team is told is where refund liability lives. Client fit guidance closes that gap. It defines who you serve and who you serve well, what expectations you can realistically meet, and what circumstances mean you should refer the person elsewhere. Then, when owners and sales staff work from the same standard, you stop signing clients you will later have to refund, and you protect the people who were never a fit in the first place. Here's the third habit, and it is a sneaky one because it can feel generous. You will be told to price based on what the client can afford. Read the prospect, gauge their budget, and quote a number that matches their wallet. I understand the instinct. You want to be accessible, you want the yes, and adjusting the price to the person feels like meeting them where they are. It is a trap for several reasons. Pricing off the prospect's perceived budget means two clients buying the same service pay wildly different amounts based on nothing but how you read them in a conversation. Needless to say, that's unethical, but that is also inconsistent and is hard to defend if anyone compares notes, and it trains you to discount under pressure, and it also signals to you that your service has no fixed value, which is corrosive to how you run everything else. And let me say one thing plainly while we're here. Offering free work to get started, even in exchange for a testimonial, is not a discount strategy. It is a signal that your time has no value, and it attracts exactly the clients who will treat it that way. Keep that off the table. Here's the modern approach. Build a structured pricing model, and the standard is a 3-tier structure. You define your tiers in advance. You know what sits inside each one, and your prices do not bend based on who is sitting across from you. Now, structured doesn't mean you slap a menu in front of a client and let them pick the cheapest line. You present consultatively. You learn what the person needs through your consultation, And then you recommend the tier that genuinely fits their situation. The structure protects your value and your consistency. The consultative delivery makes sure the client lands in the right package instead of the largest or the smallest one. Notice how this connects back to everything we have already covered. A real consultation tells you who the client is. Client fit guidance tells you whether to serve them at all. Structured pricing tells you what to recommend once you have decided yes. The pieces work together. The old school version skips straight to the price built on a guess. Build your scope responsibly. Dating coaching, relationship coaching, and beyond. Here's the fourth habit, and it carries real risk when it goes wrong. You will meet matchmakers who fold coaching and other services into their offer without anyone on the team actually trained to deliver them. The pitch sounds appealing. Be everything to your client, become the whole solution. I'm going to start with coaching because a lot of matchmakers get tripped up before they even begin. Many of them treat coaching as one thing. Coaching is coaching. In practice, two very different disciplines hide under that one word, and confusing them does the client a disservice. Dating coaching helps a single person attract, meet, and date. The work is about confidence, putting yourself out there, reading interests, and getting from a first conversation to a real connection. In plain terms, it helps someone get the gal or the guy. Relationship coaching is a different craft. It helps a person build and sustain a relationship once they are in one. Communication, working through conflict, deepening commitment, keeping the connection alive over time. It picks up roughly where dating coaching leaves off. A coach who is great at helping someone land a partner is not automatically equipped to help that same person sustain the relationship a year later, and the reverse holds too. When a matchmaker offers coaching without knowing which kind the client needs or assumes one coach covers both, the client pays for guidance that does not fit the problem in front of them. So here's the standard. You can absolutely offer coaching inside your packages as long as a team member trained in that specific kind of coaching delivers it within their scope. Match the coach with the need. You stay in your role as the matchmaker, and a package built that way serves the client well. What you cannot do is improvise services you are not trained to provide yourself, which includes blurring dating coaching, relationship coaching, and for that matter, clinical work into one undefined offer. A quick word on the clinical line because it sits in its own category. Therapy is regulated care, and a client working through grief, trauma, or a mental health concern needs a licensed professional. If you bring that in-house, a licensed clinician has to deliver it, separate from the matchmaking relationship. Many clients already have therapy covered through insurance or a public health system. So where that coverage exists, point them to a provider who can use it instead of charging for clinical care inside a matchmaking fee. Nothing here is legal or medical advice, so confirm what applies where you operate. Here's the reframe that makes point 9 easier to live with. Referring a client to someone better equipped is one of the clear signals of a professional, and the standards treat it as a duty of care rather than an optional courtesy. When you can say to a client, part of what you're working through sits outside what I do, and I want you to have the right support for it. You build more trust than any all-in-one pitch could. You keep doing the matchmaking work while the right professional handles the rest. The IMC board code frames this very directly. When you cannot reasonably support a client, you have a duty to refer them to a qualified professional, made with the client's consent, of course, and limited to providers you reasonably believe can meet their needs. Not just refer them to anyone, but people that you believe are going to do a good job. That's the duty of care. And knowing your limits and acting on them is what separates a durable practice from a risky one. Why all four habits trace back to the same root? Step back and look at the four habits together. The one called close, taking everyone, pricing based on what you think they can afford, and stretching beyond your training, they share a single root. Each one prioritizes getting the yes over confirming you can deliver. Modern matchmaking flips the order. You confirm fit, you confirm value, you confirm you are the right person for the work, and only then do you enroll. Slower at the front end, far more stable at the back end. Fewer refunds, fewer chargebacks, fewer reviews you have to live down, and a great deal less burnout because you stop carrying clients you were never positioned to serve. Let me leave you with a practical filter because you will keep meeting experienced matchmakers, and most of them have something worth hearing. When someone hands you advice, ask three questions. First, who does this protect? The client or just the sale? Second, what happens 90 days after the contract is signed if I follow it? Third, would this hold up if a client or a regulator or a reviewer looked at exactly how I did it? Advice that protects the client, survives the 90-day test, and holds up under scrutiny is advice worth keeping, no matter how old it is. Advice that fails those questions belongs in the past, no matter how confidently it is delivered. Respect the source, inspect the method. Keep your standards higher than the era you inherited. Everything we just covered, the consultation process, client fit guidance, structured pricing, knowing the edges of your scope, is teachable. You do not have to reverse engineer it all alone from advice you have trust. That is the entire reason Love Pro Mastermind Academy exists. The client fit guidance framework I described earlier is one of the proprietary systems we build directly with our students. We do not hand you a stack of pre-recorded videos and wish you luck. We work with you so you build these systems into your business while someone who has done it. You learn the modern method the first time instead of unlearning the old one after it has already cost you a refund. If you are building a matchmaking business and you want to do it on the foundation that holds up, come see what we have to offer at lovepromastermind.com. Build it right the first time. For our compliance corner, I want to show you that the four habits we discussed do not rest on my opinion alone. They line up with the professional standards laid out in the IMC Board Code of Conduct. The IMC Board is an independent standards and accreditation body. It does not provide legal advice, and nothing here is legal guidance. What it offers is a published standard for ethical practice, and each of these four habits runs afoul of it. On the one called close, high pressure selling, the code addresses no high pressure selling directly. Sales interactions are expected to be conducted ethically and respectfully without coercion or manufactured urgency. On taking every client, the code speaks to service suitability. The standard is that you accept clients only when you reasonably believe you can serve them thoroughly and professionally. Client fit guidance is simply the operational tool that lets you meet that standard consistently across your whole team. On pricing, the code calls for transparency and ethical billing. The billing should reflect services actually rendered, and a structured pricing model is how you stay on the right side of that. On scope, the code sets out a referral obligation, a duty of care. When you cannot reasonably support a client, you refer them to a qualified professional with the client's consent, of course. And improvising work you are not trained to deliver runs against that duty. And underneath all of it, the code prohibits guarantees and requires realistic expectations about process, timelines, and outcomes. Every habit we challenge today is a shortcut around that principle. If you want to see where your own practice stands against a published standard, the code of conduct is the place to start. Before you move on with your day, sit with these. Pull out a notebook if you can, because the matchmakers who act on these questions are the ones who build something that lasts. 1. Look at your last 5 enrollments honestly. How many did you close on the first conversation before you had confirmed you could actually serve them well? 2. Is your client fit guidance written down? And does your sales team work from the same version you do? If the answer lives only in your head, that is your first project this week. 3. Are you pricing from a structure or are you reading wallets and quoting on the spot? 4. If you offer coaching, is the person delivering it trained in that specific kind? For anything else in your packages, can you or a qualified team member actually deliver it? And if not, who can you refer the client to? 5. Think of the most experienced matchmakers whose advice you follow. Run their last 3 pieces of advice through the filter from point 12. Who does it protect? What happens 90 days later? And would it hold up under scrutiny? Here is where I will leave you. The matchmakers who built this industry deserve your respect. They also built it in a different era. Your work is to carry forward what is timeless and to retire what has become dangerous. Keep the wisdom, update the method. Hold your standards higher than the playbook you inherited. And if you want to stay ahead of where this industry is heading, the shifts in consumer expectations, the regulatory changes, the practices that are starting to put matchmakers at risk, that is exactly what On the Radar is for. It is our business intelligence brief for professional matchmakers, and it exists so you are reacting to change early instead of finding out the hard way. Get on the list so the next outdated habit does not catch you off guard. And if this episode gave you something to think about, subscribe so you do not miss what is next, and send it to a newer matchmaker who is about to inherit advice they have not learned to question yet. I will see you in the next one. Keep raising the bar.
If today's episode resonated, make sure you're subscribed to the Matchmaker Mentor podcast on YouTube and Spotify. New episodes are released weekly and are designed to support professional matchmakers who want to operate with clarity, structure, and integrity. You can also join our monthly industry brief, On the Radar, for ongoing insight into what's changing behind the scenes in professional matchmaking. Until next time, stay grounded in your standards, intentional in your systems, and committed to doing this work at a higher level. I'm Arlene Washburn, and this is the Matchmaker Mentor Podcast.